So the first question to ask yourself, any of you, about what it is that is something you've been hanging on to for a very long time, that is a part of your life that you find almost impossible to change. Even though you know what to think and you've been to all the seminars, you've read the books, you've done the right things, you still find yourself going back and slipping back into habituated ways of behaving and thinking, right? And what I'm suggesting to all of you here today is that in moments, like for every single person who this morning decided to do something about their sugar intake based upon what we did yesterday, you have demonstrated that you are now about to embark on a new way of being. You've demonstrated it. Even if you just checked a package and seen how many sugar grams were in what it was you were going to eat and then ate it anyway, it doesn't matter. Even if you smoke Pakalolo every single day and you said, you know what, maybe this isn't good for my brain, but I think maybe tonight I'll just think about it tomorrow. You're on your way. Because we become what we think about, whether we want it or not. If you have a choice to think a thought that may or may not be true, but thinking that thought will keep you from where you want to go, versus thinking a thought that may or may not be true, but thinking that thought will at least give you a chance to get to where you want to be, why do we continue to take the first choice when the second choice is the only option we have for changing our conception of ourselves? But we train ourselves through this subconscious meme training that we've had to start believing in things that are going to keep us from ever getting where we want to go. If you have a choice to think a thought that may or may not be true, but it will keep you from getting to where you want to be, versus thinking a thought that may or may not be true, but will at least give you an opportunity to get there, what's the choice? This is what Lao Tzu was telling me over and over and over again. Teach people to take the excuses that they use and to put them into a context that may or may not be true, and ask them to reverse it, and then pick the one that will at least get you to where you want to be. The woman that sat next to me on the airport, I've never forgotten her. She was a photographer here on Maui. She was doing a wedding, and then she was on her way back. We were sitting on an airplane on American Airlines, and she put above the seat a whole bunch of photographic equipment, and I asked her about it, and I said, what do you do? She said, I'm a photographer. I said, do you like it? Do you enjoy it? She said, yes. She said, but I'll never get rich at it. And I said, would you like to get rich? And she said, of course, who wouldn't want to be rich? And I said, let me see if I understand you. You would like to be rich, but the thoughts you carry around in your head are, I'll never get there. What's the reverse of I'll never get there? I will get there. It's on its way. In fact, I'm already here. Why wouldn't you think that thought? So now, the second question is, where did these thoughts come from? They came from you. You bought into all of this stuff. All of us bought into this little stuff. The I'm too young or I'm too old. Like our age has something to do with what we can create or do in our lives. There's endless examples of people who've overcome that. You know, Louise Hay started Hay House Publishing at the age of 61. It's 22 years. She's 83. CEO of the largest publishing company in the world on spiritual and higher consciousness materials. And she started it at 61 because she didn't buy into that meme. So what I say to you is that there were kids in school next to you who were told the very same thing that you were told. Your siblings were told the same things by the same mother. Some of your siblings didn't buy into that at all. And some of them did, and some of them got scared. And what I say to you is, even though you didn't know it at the time, you were still making choices to buy it. If you're not willing to take responsibility for having chosen to carry around these beliefs, then you have no chance of overcoming them. You have as much chance as if you send your mother to me and I treat her and you expect to get better. It just isn't going to happen. So I say to you, the answer to the second question is, I chose them all. And I say that to you about everything, even your most serious illnesses. Take responsibility for it. It's yours. You own it. Don't feel yourself that you were being punished, that it was some karmic debt, that there was something bad happened in a previous life, and you were an axe murderer, and now you're getting this. Don't do that. But take responsibility for it, because the minute you say, I chose it, it's mine, I carry it around with me, I live with it, I breathe with it, I bleed it, which is what I do with my leukemia. That's what I do with it. It's mine, I own it, I took it on, and that's the only chance I have of saying goodbye to it. It's the only chance. I can blame this girl or that girl or my children or, all of the different traumas in my life. I can blame the environment. I can blame the food we eat, the mercury in the fish. I can blame it all, the Ayatollahs. It's got to be somebody else's fault. It can't be mine. I don't get leukemia. It's mine. I was a vibrational match to it. I take responsibility for it. And now the third question is, what are my payoffs? What do you think is the major payoff? I go through about 10 of them in the book. The payoff for using the meme, psychological payoffs, avoidance of doing what I came here to do. It's simply easier. Now here's the fourth question, and this is all I'm going to do. What would your life look like if you couldn't use those excuses that you've been using? If you just couldn't come up with them, if somehow I wired your brain in such a way that you could not think those three thoughts, what would your life look like? If you couldn't think the thoughts that you've been thinking that are keeping you from where you want to be, you would feel more joy, more accomplished. What I'm saying to all of you is that if you want to overcome any of the things that you think came to you as a result of abuse, abandonment, brokenness, despair, depressed parents, whatever it might be, certainly don't exclude that and just toss it out the window and say it's not relevant, but recognize that you just didn't have the strength then, but that was then and this is now. I turn to Mother Teresa to offer you a way to improve those negative environmental fields. The following 8 points are from Mother Teresa of Calcutta, followed by my comments on each of her suggestions. People are often unreasonable, illogical, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. When you notice low-energy conduct of others, rather than allowing it to impact and infect your immediate surroundings, send them a silent blessing. When you forgive them, you choose to not be impacted in a negative manner. If you are kind, people may accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. Your field of energy is protected from contamination by kindness. Kindness that comes from your heart will suffice to keep you from being dragged down into an energy field infected by false accusations. If you are successful, you will win some false friends and some true enemies. Succeed anyway. The world is filled with people who are looking for occasions to be offended. Your success at anything is enough to trigger such a reaction in others. Keep your energy field pristine by focusing on what you know to be your divine purpose, and by doing so, the universe will support and sustain you with what is labeled success. If you are honest and frank, people may cheat you. Be honest and frank anyway. Your energy field will remain uncontaminated as long as you know that you are being honest and frank. This may attract others at the lower energies of dishonesty and cheating to try to take advantage of you. But you will not become their victim because you will have the sense of inner peace that characterizes higher and faster spiritual energy. What you spend years building, someone may destroy overnight. Build anyway. When you eat a banana, the goal is not to finish it, but to enjoy each bite while nourishing yourself. Everything in the material world, that is built will ultimately be destroyed. Build not in fear of having it destroyed, but because you are giving expression to the infinite spirit within. If you find serenity and happiness, they may be jealous. Be happy anyway. Happiness is an inside job. You don't get it from anyone or anything. You bring it to everyone in every event of your life. Others may be jealous, find fault with you, and say terrible things about you, but you are free to choose happiness for yourself. The good you do today, people will often forget tomorrow. Do good anyway. Like being happy, doing good is something that you do as an expression of your invisible spiritual essence. Stop looking for the approval and gratitude of others as your reason to do good. Ego, rooted in the material world, urges you to do what you do so that you will be remembered and rewarded as if life were a contest. Remind yourself to give love and to do good because that is who you are, and for no other reasons. And finally, Mother Teresa's last suggestion. Give the world the best you have, and it may never be enough. Give the world the best you've got, anyway. The best, as used by Mother Teresa, implies your highest, most sacred self. Others may attempt to contaminate your energy field by demanding more of you, or by criticizing you, or even by ignoring your efforts. When you return to your highest self, you are independent of those opinions almost instantly, and problems of feeling unappreciated are non-existent. Give the world your spirit and detach from the outcome of your efforts, and your energy field becomes less and less contaminated. Your intellect might protest and attempt to convince you that minefields and silent communication of energy are nonsense. But once you see this at work, you'll know. I've seen it work over and over in my own life. When I'm able to consciously project love, understanding, and compassion to those in my immediate life space, I feel the shift in energy. My wife, Marceline, is a master at this. Marceline has delivered 7 babies without any drugs, each time creating the kind of energy I describe here. Moreover, she is now a doula, a woman who assists others in delivering their babies in an atmosphere where fear and anxiety are replaced with a calm, loving feeling of thankfulness for being able to participate in such a miracle. The closer you come to being in a dynamic state of grace in your thoughts and refusing to be in the fields of those who are projecting lower energy thoughts, the closer you come to being in God's minefield.
When we take this power of this invisible part of us, it's so hard to define this. We call it a belief, or you call it a thought, or you call it your soul, or your spirit, or whatever. But that invisible part of you that really determines everything about your life. And you begin to say to yourself, how can I apply the awareness of these thoughts and how I use my mind to make my life all that I want it to be? To bring into my life the things that are important to me, to improve the quality of my relationships, to have the success and so on that I think that I'm entitled to. And it's really getting to the point where you know that every thought that you have has a potential for coming into your life, for coming into form. You start to get real cautious about having anything in your mind that isn't going to work for you. And question why you would keep any of those thoughts in you. I can remember one story of a woman who came to me one time and told me how miserable she was, that she was married to a drunk. And I said, well, what's wrong? And she said, well, he slurs his words, and he repeats himself, and he smells bad, and it's just awful to be around him. And I said, let's see if I understand. Let's see who's crazy in this little scenario you've just described. Now, you said you've married to a drunk, and the drunk slurs his words, and he repeats himself, and he smells bad, and he sounds foolish. I said, that's every drunk I've ever known does exactly that. We got a drunk who's acting and doing everything that you would expect a drunk to do. Now we got you. And you're married to someone that you call a drunk, and you're expecting him to be sober. You know, now who's crazy? The drunk who's doing what he's supposed to, or you who's expecting someone who is what you've defined him to be something different than what they are? He is what he is. And why would you want to entertain, why would you want to keep thoughts in your mind that are making you miserable, which is going to expand misery for you in your life by just having those thoughts? Why not change around those thoughts and tell yourself that you're, like, if you argue for your misery, then the only thing you're going to get is your misery. You have to get that, and you're arguing for it all the time. You're going around talking about how miserable you are. So you want to get real careful about that. And I suggest to every one of you that whatever it is you find yourself incapable of doing, or whatever you found that has been a great obstacle, or whatever it is that's in a relationship that isn't working, that you just can't seem to transcend, or whatever's going on with a particular employee or a way that you're approaching anything in your business, that if you examine, just for a moment, if you examine what belief is it that supports this behavior, because the ancestor to every action is a belief, is a thought, and then work at re-examining that. I mean, I've done that so many times in my own life, and things that don't seem like they're that important to other people. Like, my wife doesn't understand why certain things about my tennis game that I play every day that I've really challenged. I mean, I grew up with the belief that I couldn't hit a backhand. And it was for 10 years I told myself that I don't have a backhand. I can't hit a backhand. And then I began to change that belief around. And it wasn't that I just, practice. I began to visualize myself doing all the things that it takes to make a backhand work for myself. I began to do that with a serve. I began to do that with a drop shot. Instead of telling myself, I can't hit a drop shot, and then acting out on that, and a whole match will go by, and a whole year will go by, and I'll never hit a drop shot, or I'll never hit a lob, or I'll never try a spin serve, or whatever. If you keep telling yourself that you can't do something, you act on that belief, and whether it's just a silly little thing like improving your tennis game, which isn't so silly if you're making your living off of it, or if you're coaching it, or any other skill area, or anything in your life, change around the thought, as you think, so shall you be. The first pathway is called discipline. All right, so this is like you have to train the body. Right? So you have to go to practice.
Yes.
Right? The second, now we're not talking about education here, we're talking about mastery. The second pathway is called wisdom, and that is the application of the mind to what you've trained yourself to do. So if you're going out to learn how to shoot a basket, or to hit a tennis ball, or to make a lemon meringue pie, or dance the Macarena, or anything, the first thing you do is you train your body, you get it in shape, and the second thing you do is you apply wisdom, the mind, to it. Right? Now this is what we mean by education. So that if we send our children off to school, we say to them, get some discipline and use your head. And basically you've got an education.
Yes.
But that's not mastery. The top two levels of mastery include, the third one's called unconditional love. I watched Pavarotti sing at one of the three tenors, Sylvia went to his concert, 42,000 of us at a football stadium in Florida.
Yeah.
And they had a screen on him, Michael, that was 30 feet high. That's 3 stories high, and they showed a close-up of him. Now, this is a man, how many times has he sang O Sole Mio in Italian, all right? There's nobody in the stadium understands Italian, but it doesn't matter. They show a close-up on his face on this 30-foot screen, and he is in bliss. He's just in bliss. And I said to my wife, who was sitting next to me, I said, honey, this guy has obviously gone to practice. I mean, you've got to practice to be the best in the world. And he's also, obviously, he's got great wisdom. He has studied. But that's not what makes him the greatest tenor in the world. I said, look at the love. Oh, solo me. I mean, he was just, every fiber of him was involved in this. He was he was in love with what he was doing. And he wasn't selling us the song, he was selling us the love.
Yes.
That's the third pathway. But the highest pathway, what we really call mastery, is what we call surrender, which is when you get to that place where you realize that this is not you who's doing any of this, that you're not this body, this is not your home, this is not you that's doing it. There's something that you're connecting to called spirit, or consciousness, or higher awareness, and you're allowing God, I guess, if you will, to flow through you and send that out into the world. That's what the highest of them are. I mean, Michael Jordan says, I don't know how I do that. I just surrender.
Yes.
That whole idea of being able to get your ego out of the way. I was just asked the question in South Africa, but they were interviewing me, one of the newspapers there, and the woman hit me with this question. She said, what's been the greatest accomplishment of your life? And my ego started really going into, high gear, and I was thinking about, how many books I'd written, how many times I'd appeared on the Tonight Show, or where I was on bestseller lists and all of this. I would I wasn't saying a word. I was just sort of rattling all of these things off that my ego wanted to say. And then finally it hit me, and I said to the woman, I said, I think the greatest accomplishment of my life has been my ability to tame my ego and to no longer see myself as what I have and what I do and what other people think of me. I'm not my possessions. I'm not my accomplishments. I'm not my reputation. I've been able to see myself as a spiritual being, if you will, having that human experience. And that is involved with letting go. As they say in that recovery movement, you let go and you let God. And that may sound trite, but it's really one of the great secrets to being able to attract and manifest into your life. One of the people that I selected in Wisdom of the Ages or selected me, was this man who we don't even know when he was born or when he lived. His name was Patanjali. I'm sure you're familiar with Patanjali.
Yes.
The original Yoga Sutras.
Yes.
And his book, How to Know God.
Yes.
And
wonderful translation by Swami Prabhupada and Christopher Isherwood.
Yes, I have that.
Yeah, it's a great translation of that. Yes.
And it's just, I mean, every page. I've never read a book that I have. When I read it, I read a page or two and I set it down and I can't wait to get back to it, but I don't want to read it because I'm afraid it's going to end. Okay, that's how I feel about that book.
Right.
Because there's so much masterful kinds of experiences and aphorisms in there that we can apply and really, really reach these miraculous levels. Anyway, one of the passages that I used from Patanjali was about this concept called inspiration, which is really what we're talking about here, because the word inspiration, of course, comes from in spirit. And the word information comes from inform. So this is the age of information, and there's no shortage of information on this planet. You know, with a computer chip that can put the name and address of everybody in the United States on it, and it's the size of your thumbnail. We've got plenty of information.
Yes.
But what we have is a spiritual deficit, a deficit of spirit. So Patanjali talked about becoming inspired as a source of, and this is what he said. He said, when you are inspired by some great purpose, some extraordinary project, all of your thoughts break their bonds, your mind transcends limitations, your consciousness expands in every direction, and you find yourself in a new and a great and a wonderful world. And then he had this alarming thing to say. I laminated this and carried it with me. He said, dormant forces, faculties, and talents come alive, and you discover yourself to be a greater person by far than you ever dreamed yourself to be. And all you have to do is become inspired, that is, move into the world of spirit. And once we do that, once we leave the form, once we leave the ego, once we leave the idea that I am what I have and what I do and my reputation, what others think of me, and begin to see ourselves as the beloved, as connected to rather than separate from God, and allow that higher spiritual awareness to flow into our lives. I think that's what we mean when we say surrender, when we say let go. I know when I'm writing, if I let go, my writing is blissful and easy. When I struggle with it and I try to think about the right word and so on, I get stuck. Same in an interview, or the same in when I'm speaking on stage, or whatever. When I let go, it's the old aphorism: when the student is ready,
yes,
the teachers appear.
You have to send away all blame for everything in your life. All right? All blame must go. You can't be blaming anything that's going on in your life. Your birth order, it doesn't matter whether you're the youngest, the oldest, the middle child. It's like wherever you are is where you were supposed to be. And if your parents did anything, you remind yourself that they did what they knew how to do. You can't ask any more of anyone. And forgive them, whatever it is. Whoever in your life is causing any dissonance, any anguish, any pain, whoever they are, any grudges that you've had, any anger that you're holding on to, anything that's lasted a long time, forgive. And if you keep that in mind and take all the blame out and say, I created who I am. My personality is who I chose. If I have been shy, I didn't inherit shy genes. I have been making shy choices. I am not a nervous person. I have been making nervous choices. I am not a person who's not good at selling. I have been making non-selling choices. Just for a moment, just take a couple of minutes and just kind of calm yourself down and try this with me. Just try it. hold your hand out if you want to. I mean, however you want to do it, and picture in your hand a lemon. Kind of close your eyes if you want to, and listen to my instructions. And take the lemon and feel the texture of the lemon. And open your eyes and look at it. See if you can see a lemon there. See if you can see the little bumps that are on a lemon. See if you can see the little green nub on one end and how it comes to sort of a little point at the other end. And feel it. And feel a little bit of the moisture almost that's on the skin. Just practice for a second. Just take a knife, paring knife, your favorite knife, and just cut it right down the center, right in half. Right? Just kind of slice it in your hand. And then take the pointy-ended side and put it away. And then take the other half of the lemon and look at it. And run your finger along the top of it and feel the moisture. Can you feel that? Now take the lemon, and as you hold it and see that lemon, just move it up close to your nose so that you can smell it. Just bring it right up and smell the fragrance of it. See if you can actually smell the citric acid. Now hold it close to your nose. Now take it back down. Now open up your mouth and take the lemon and move it up close to your mouth, as close as you can get it, and take a bite right out of it. Go ahead, just take a bite out of it. Now what's happening in your mouth right now? Okay. Do you have saliva in your mouth? Most of you have. You're going to get a little more in about another 5 seconds. You feel the saliva coming into your mouth? Why is saliva coming into your mouth? Because citric acid is attacking your mouth right now. And the only defense you have against citric acid in the billions of years of evolution that have produced you is saliva. Saliva goes into your mouth to fight it. It's still there, isn't it? Mouth kind of dry. You feel it? That's visualization. It's nothing difficult. There's nothing complex about it. That's what hypnotism is.
The importance of visualization for me in imagery can be related to almost every single thing that you do in life. If you're a salesperson and you visualize a sale not working out, or even if you have that thought that that person probably won't want to buy this thing from me, or they won't want to close on this deal that we have agreed to, if you think that way and visualize it that way, you're creating the opportunity for you to have exactly that happen to you. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you see it in your mind as working out, closing the deal, getting someone to buy the product, whatever it is, and if you're selling brake linings to a hardware store, and you can see the brake linings on their shelf, and you can see the receipt, and you can practice that image and see it, and then operate on that image. If it doesn't work out, let's start from that premise. You say, all right, instead of, see, this guy's wrong, I knew that this karma stuff, and I don't want to hear any more of this stuff. You don't do that. You say, there's something in this for me. It's not supposed to be working out right now. I wonder what I can do to learn from that. Let me re-examine it. Let me look at it. You don't blame anybody else, all right? Blame must go. If you are going into a tax audit and you believe that it's not going to work out, you are going to act out on that auditing image that you have in your mind. And you will not prepare yourself in the same way as if you believe that you're not going to have to pay more taxes and that you've been an honest taxpayer and that you filled out your forms properly and that you are entitled to not have to pay additional taxes, and that's how you're going to operate. And you get an accountant who believes that as well, and you go in from that premise, you'll find yourself having much, much less difficulty than if you go in saying, oh, they're going to look through my records, this is going to take 2 days, they have no right to go through all of these things, I hate it when they do this, and you go through this whole process. You are creating what it is that you don't want for yourself, because you're going to operate and behave on the basis of whatever image you have. If you believe it's going to be nasty, you're going to start behaving in ways to have that outcome come about. If you want to get a parking place, you can image yourself seeing one. Instead of looking for no place to park, you begin to see yourself as having one. If you want to have health, you begin to see yourself looking and feeling and acting the way you want to, and never detracting from that picture, and you can make that happen for yourself in your life. If you don't want negative things to go on in your life, then practice visualizing and having positive affirmations toward the things that you previously thought negatively about. Your thought processes create the images that you have. Those images create the behavior, and you can't back one up from the other unless you're willing to think that it's going to work out, and that's the premise you're operating from. That's a very important point for people if they want to be enlightened. If you believe that it's going to work out, then you'll start to see opportunities. If you don't, then you'll see obstacles.
Do you have a definition for crisis? Like, what is a crisis?
It's a gift. It's a gift. Everything is. It's interesting you mentioned The Power of Intention, because I wrote that book in what you would call a crisis. My wife and I had separated. I was 60 years old. You don't break up when you're 60 and have 7 kids. You know, you do that in junior high school. And for about a year and a half, I was in the closest thing I've ever had to a depression, a clinical depression. Didn't want to get up, just couldn't figure it out. My wife had met somebody else, had moved in with them and so on. And my children encouraged me to just start writing again. They said, if you just write about it. And I really didn't want to write about it. But I had lost a lot of weight. People thought I was sick. People thought I was dying, and so on. And that book was just channeled to me. And I think in moments of crisis, what it teaches us is to become more compassionate. And compassion is at the heart of higher consciousness and enlightenment. The Dalai Lama said that if we could take every child on the planet and have them meditate on compassion for 1 hour a week, every child at the age of 5, in one generation we could eliminate all violence on Earth. So that's how powerful he believes compassion to be. And I understood that, because The Power of Intention was a major shift for me. I began to look less flippantly and less egotistically at the world, and came from a place of inner grace or kindness, gentleness, love, what I call divine love. So that I've always felt that it is not always so important to just be in a state of gratitude when things go well, and when you're around people that smell good and that make you feel good and that look good, but it's the low points in our life, reminders that there's something inside of us that wants to have an outpouring of love. See, even the miser who loves his gold doesn't really love his gold because of the gold. The gold is just another thing. It doesn't have any love in it. It's just an object, a metal object. The reason that the miser loves his gold is because of the outpouring of love that he has for the gold. And that's true of everything and everyone. It's learning to have this outpouring of love, and you don't just have to have it for people and events, but you can have it for this microphone, and you can have it for the cameras, and you can have it for the wall, and the table, and the chair, and everything that you encounter. And I think for me, probably what you would call a crisis in my life was a diagnosis of leukemia 3 years ago. And when I first heard that word leukemia has cancer all around it. Cancer has a lot of fear all around it. And even if you aren't afraid to die, which I'm not, there's no point in being afraid of that. There's no point in being afraid of anything. You still, there's that inbred sort of psychic kind of awareness that cancer and fear go together, And so it was, it turned out to be one of the great blessings in my life. I encountered John of God down in Brazil, and was able to have just a magical experience around it. But what happened is, when I had this healing and leukemia was taken out of my body, it wasn't so much that leukemia was taken out. What was taken out was fear, and it was replaced by love. Almost immediately, not almost, immediately after I had what they call the removal of the sutures, a week after the surgery, this remote surgery, I started feeling just love for everyone. I walked out of the room that morning, 7 days after the surgery, and I looked at my children and I just put my arms around them. I said, "You've just never looked more beautiful." And I looked at the ocean, and it looked like just a big bowl of love soup. And the trees looked fluorescent, and every person that I walked by and looked at just became just objects of love.